Hello. In the previous session, we saw how to develop ideal curves. So, column curves are basically the curves which define the strength of a particular column. And we saw how normalized failure stress and generalized slenderness ratios can be used to develop generic column curves, which will be applicable for all types of lengths and all types of sections. Now let us see the main differences between ideal versus real columns. Right. So in real columns, we were using purely theoretical considerations, and there were no. Uh, we did not address any issues with respect to imperfections. Now, in reality, there can be two types of imperfections in the construction. One is called the initial out of straightness or initial out of plumpness, which we saw that in case of compression members can invigorate the failure, whereas in tension members it was not an issue. The other important imperfection can be residual stresses. So, if you recall the manufacturing process, these plates or these sections are typically rolled in at high temperatures, and then they are kept for cooling. Now, this cooling can become actually non-uniform. So, the members which are far away, or the portions of the members which are far away, they can cool faster, and the portions of the member which are inside can cool a little later. So this gives rise to residual stresses. Okay. Now, one more issue that can happen during construction is eccentricity. So even though now we are talking about perfectly straight columns, which were perfectly axially loaded, even though the objective might be to apply the load on the centroidal axis, but in reality it will be very difficult. In fact, it is almost impossible to perfectly align the load with the axis in real construction. So because of these reasons, the real column behavior is somewhat different compared to the ideal uh, columns. Now, if we consider this figure, this is plotted now between the load versus the slenderness ratio, right? So, if we try to trace out the ideal column behavior, so it will be like this. So, first, up to a certain slenderness ratio, yielding is governing, where the yield strength or the yield load is greater than the critical buckling load, and beyond that, the critical buckling load is lower than the yield, so that will govern the failure. So this red outline is what is the ideal curve that we have developed in the previous session. Now a lot of experiments have been performed on columns of different configuration, right? And the gray shaded region is the range of test results. Okay, so this is how for different slenderness ratios and for different sectional configurations the failure loads were observed, right? Now if we go to very small slenderness ratios, the failure loads are actually in excess of py, and this is primarily because of the strain hardening effects, because steel would not fail at fy, it still has some reserve strength, right? And at the extreme right hand side, where the slenderness ratios are very, very large, the behavior is primarily governed by buckling. Okay, and for very large slenderness ratios, also there isn't a great deal of divergence from the test results from the theory. But in the intermediate stage, actually there is a lot of divergence. So basically, if we consider very, very stocky columns, which means very small slenderness ratios, the behavior will not be affected to a great extent by these two imperfections that we are talking about, although they might be a little bit affected but not to a great extent. Similarly, if we consider very, very slender columns, again the behavior may not be affected to a great extent by the imperfections. But if we consider an intermediate range of slenderness ratios, that is where these effects, these imperfections have a large significance, right? And it turns out that most of the columns which are used in practice, which means which are economically being used in construction, they fall in the intermediate stage. Okay, so in general, it is very important to consider these departures from the ideal curve of the real columns. Okay, so now initial out of straightness, it is possible to actually incorporate theoretically also. and we will see that in a moment. But for the residual stresses, it might be useful to do a little bit of visualization. So let's say there are two rectangular sections as shown here, 1 and 2. So let's say in section 1 there is no residual stress, right? So this is perfectly zero stress. In an unloaded state, if we were to try to plot the stress distribution on the cross section, the axial stress distribution, for section 1 it is going to be perfectly zero because it is a perfect section, there is no residual stress, right? For section 2, there is a region where there is some residual stress, let us say, which is far away from the member. So in this case, what will happen is that this region is going to have some residual stress. Okay, let's call it Fr. So this residual stress, even though the member is not loaded, that portion of the member is under residual stress. Now, let's say if we load it to a certain extent by compressive force. So in the section 1, it will induce a uniformly distributed stress. Right? Let's say this is F1. Now in section 2, if it were not having a residual stress, the stress distribution would look like this, which is, let's say, F1. But because of this residual stress in that region, there will be an additional stress, right? So here it will be F1 plus Fr. Right? So because of the residual stress, a part of this member, the cross section, is going to experience a larger amount of stress. And if we take the loading further to yielding, in the first case, in section 1, there will be uniform yielding of the entire cross section, where the stress reaches uniformly to Fy throughout. Whereas in the other section, actually, the portion under residual stress will reach Fy first. Okay, and the rest of the portion will be actually at a stress which is lower than Fy. Right? And uh, so for this region, what we see is that the actual capacity of the member is the elastic capacity is going to be smaller, right? So the load at which the residual stress portion reaches Fy will be actually much smaller than the load at which the perfect section is reaching Fy. Okay, and this is going to cause reduction in strength. So this is why we see a lot of divergence of the experimental results from the theoretical curves. Okay. Now, one of the approaches to consider this real column behavior, which the earlier IS 800 was using. So the 1984 version of the IS 800 was using something called a Merchant-Rankine column curve. Okay, so this was defined like this, and this is like a hyperbolic type of curve. So Fc by Fy. So Fc here stands for the failure stress. Okay, so again, if failure stress is Fy, then this becomes simply 1. If the failure stress is critical buckling, then it will be the ratio. So the failure stress, normalized failure stress, comes out in this form, and n here, the power, that is an empirical tuning parameter. So basically, based on the experimental results, a particular value of n can be chosen so that this particular equation gives the real column curves. Okay, so in the IS 800 1984, n equal to 1.4 was used. Right. So if this is the ideal column curve, which we had derived earlier without considering the imperfection effects, if we try to plot this Merchant-Rankine uh, equation here, this is how it looks like, right? So again, what you can notice is that for very stocky columns, there is very little departure of the Merchant-Rankine from the ideal columns, and for very large slenderness ratios, again there is very little departure. Most of the things which differ are happening in the intermediate range. Okay, and here we are plotting generalized slenderness ratio. So basically, from an ideal column perspective, lambda bar equal to 1 is the transition point, right? So basically, this is where uh, yielding limit state will change to buckling limit state. right? But in real columns, it is not that sharp. So basically, somewhere beyond a certain slenderness ratio, it begins to change. And in general, this in real columns, in general, this has been empirically found to be zero point 0.2. Okay, so lambda bar less than zero point 0.2 in real columns in general governs yielding, and lambda bar greater than zero point 0.2, buckling begins to govern in the real columns. Now, the current version of the code considers a different approach, which is the so-called Perry-Robertson approach. This Perry-Robertson approach actually considers the effects of initial imperfection in the formulation directly. Okay, and it uses yielding as the limit state. We are not going to derive this in this session, but in case you are interested in looking at the derivation, please do follow this link. So there is a very nice description and derivation of the Perry-Robertson approach and how the column curves can be obtained from there. Okay, so the current Indian code IS 800 that uses this Perry-Robertson approach to develop the column buckling curves or the column strength curves. So this is given as figure number 8 in the IS 800. And one thing which is also noticeable here is that these curves are defined or divided into 4 different buckling classes. These are classes A, B, C, and D. Now, the buckling classes are defined based on local buckling, which we will see in the next session. But what one thing to notice here is that again in the initial portion, which is roughly lambda less than zero point 0.2, lambda bar less than zero point 0.2. So the x-axis here is lambda bar. So roughly lambda bar less than zero point 0.2, there is no difference in the strength curves. And again, for large values, let's say lambda bar greater than 2.5, again the different column curves are coinciding almost to each other, right? The maximum difference occurs in the intermediate range. Okay, and we will see what these buckling classes mean in the next session. So we saw how real columns behavior is different than the ideal column, and we saw two approaches. One was the Merchant-Rankine approach, which was used by the earlier code, and one is the Perry-Robertson approach, which is used by the current IS 800. And basically, both of these approaches are trying to consider the effects of imperfections, the initial out of plumbness and the residual stresses into the column strength curves.